So thank you all so much for coming out. Broken Wings is an incredible film that selection committee saw several months ago, directed by John Sutak, who had previously done Dawns of Disco at the festival a couple years back. And well, he's got a newborn, so he couldn't make it out here this year, but he offered Jayne up to us, and we were just absolutely thrilled to death to have her come in here. If any of y'all saw the film previously, her Q&A was the highlight of my festival so far. And we are doing it again tomorrow, showing the film one more time. So if you haven't seen it yet, come on out. But you're going to get a crack at her today as well. So I guess if I could go down the line, let y'all introduce yourselves. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Start with me?
You start with you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Katie Warner, and I'm the director over the Center for Birds of Prey in Maitland. And if you haven't been over there, we're just right down the road. We're a raptor rehabilitation facility open to the public, and we do clinical programs for injured birds of prey, so eagles, hawks, owls, and vultures. We have education programs that are based out of there and some science programs also, so we welcome you to come visit and learn a little bit about Audubon.
I'm Laura Von Medius, and I am an educator for the Center for Birds of Prey. Tim mentioned that Adonis was the cutest vulture, and I would rival that statement because we have a few very adorable vultures that live at our center, so you should definitely come and meet them.
I accept that challenge.
Well, I'm Jayne Lakhani, and I actually am the one that feeds Adonis, and I met their vultures, and they're very cute too. So I have a backup plan, maybe if anything ever happens. Anyway, so I thank you for coming out and inviting me to Florida. This is great, and hopefully, I wrote a children's book and to enlighten kids about these birds, because I think they get a lot of bad rap.
Yeah.
You know, they're not. I don't see them as an ugly creature that a lot of people give them. You know, so hopefully we can make some changes. But this is at the Bird Center. I just took a brief, went over there, and I get to see some eagles released tomorrow. So I'm looking forward to it. It's really great, amazing center. Yeah. And thank you for inviting us to this film.
Well, thank you for coming. Jayne, could maybe tell the audience a little bit about how long since you met Adonis and sort of what your daily routine has been like since then.
Yeah. Well, I met Adonis because I went to work for a restaurant called Luna Bella, and we just opened, and then we were doing Sunday brunch, and across the street I'd see this big bird with white legs sitting on the stump, and he'd watch every day, and I started feeding the stray cats, and I noticed he was coming over, and then one of my co-workers said they were going to kill him because they had a new car, and he loved the chrome on their wheels, so he'd see that chrome and he'd peck at it. So I decided I better teach him not to cross the road. So I started doing that, and I built his trust, and I named him because he was beautiful. A friend of mine actually named him, my friend that's a character, because I said, "Isn't he beautiful?" And he said, "Yeah, name him after the Greek god of beauty." So it's kind of stuck, and he knows his name, and he's a very loving bird, but he doesn't like to be picked up because he's unsteady. So he's not a pet. I spend 10 minutes a day, basically. I go every day, almost every day. So he's not a pet. I mean, I did bring him into my house when he got hurt. We lost 3 toes. And in the winter, a couple of winters ago, we had a rough winter. And I have a cat that's in the movie that kind of watched out for him, and he taught him how to use a litter box, so that made my life a little easier. So anyway, he's a character, so he's definitely got feelings. So I appreciate everybody coming out and finding out about him. I really appreciate the film festival because it's quite an honor. Jonathan's a great filmmaker.
Yeah, real nice guy too. Did anybody has seen the movie in the audience? You guys can? Okay, great. Oh, I'm excited. Y'all gonna learn a little bit. We're trying to do too much spoilers for you, I guess. Spoiler: it's adorable. How long have you ladies been with the Birds of Prey Center?
So I've been with the Birds of Prey Center just over 20 years, so quite a long
That's
time.
phenomenal.
And our center started in 1979 from a Florida Audubon member that recognized a need to do rehab. She was doing rehab of injured birds of prey out of her home, And so she really recognized the need to bring awareness to bald eagles, because at that time they were still on the endangered species list. So she got permission to go sit in an inactive bald eagle's nest to raise funds to start a raptor center.
That's
So
after that.
that was our beginnings. And so she got a lot of community support, and we take that mission and message forward with helping bald eagles and other birds of prey at our site.
So I've been with the center for 5 years as an educator. So going out to the community, we actually have 17 glove-trained birds. They are quite smart, like Jayne said, that are glove-trained and kennel-trained. So they go with me off-site to visit schools and different groups around the community in order to teach about conservation. And then, of course, doing tours at the center and our summer camps and adult programs as well.
That's actually a good segue to tell everybody the surprise we have for them at the end of the event. You will have to go outside for the surprise so that the library doesn't have a heart attack. You want to let them know what's going to happen?
Yeah, we did bring one of our glove-trained birds with us today, a small kestrel named Lance. So after we're done in here, we can migrate outside and be able to meet him.
Oh, I like the use of migrate.
Oh, yeah.
So good. I imagine we could just sit here and talk to each other for a long time today, but we'd love if you guys wanted to toss up some questions here and there, maybe spark some additional conversation. Lisa.
Jayne, what was your opinion of raptors before you met Adonis?
Well, I've always loved birds. You know, ironically, when I was growing up, my dad was a Quaker, so, but my brother, we lived in the country in Texas, so they did hunt for a little while. But I had Janie's infirmary, my mother, in my bedroom, like all the wounded by popsicle sticks and stuff like that. And then all my family stopped hunting because I had all those birds. And one day I had 12 baby possums in there. My mother went to put my socks away, and she opened the drawer and saw all these little, and she thought they were rats. I said, no, the neighbor's dog killed the mother, so I got them all in here. So that started, I was about 7 years old. So, and I've always had lots of crazy stuff. So, yeah, I should be a vegetarian, but I'm not. Too bad. So.
I think
Been
that's.
in contact with raptors before him, or?
No, I mean, I've had friends that had parrots and stuff like that. I got a funny story about that too. My friend had this parrot in Vegas. He was beautiful, and he'd take showers with him. And I always thought they had he'd always say, "Want some coffee?" And I ignored him one day on the couch, and he came over there and he grabbed he said, I said, do you want some coffee? I said, I didn't know you had that much vocabulary. He wouldn't let me go. So, yeah, I love birds, so especially, he was pretty cool. But Adonis is really cool. He's wild.
Yeah.
But he trusts. I mean, if I take somebody up there, he knows if they go back that they're safe. There was a woman a couple of years ago that came out there. My friend was at work, and she had this big box, and she was trying to catch him. And I said, what are you doing? I said, you're on private property. She said, I'm taking this bird. He's hurt. I said, I've been feeding that bird for 12 years. I would be the first person to bring him in if he was sick or hurt. He's happy. The Fish and Game, everybody knows about him. He's in a safe spot. So we got into it. I said, you're on private property, so leave. I said, if you really want to help, come back the next day and feed him. Help me feed him. It's expensive. I feed, spent $48,000 on this bird. Help me feed him. She came back one day, and that was it. She fed him some chicken, and then that was it. She never came back. So she decided maybe it was too expensive of an endeavor or whatever. But she left him alone.
I think it's a really good kind of thing to bring up, and maybe y'all can talk about a little bit as well about his interaction between people and a wild animal. Obviously, this is a unique situation where you have a bird that has essentially half of one of their wings and really probably cannot survive on its own in the wild. And, a little bit about maybe what we can do or support or things that, like I said, Jayne's talking about how much money it costs just to take care of this one animal. You're taking care of several. So if you guys maybe want to talk a little bit about that as well.
So certainly to follow up, like any patient that we get at our facility, we do specifically raptors. There's many other groups around Central Florida that help with injured wildlife like mammals and other species, but our specialty is raptors, so eagles, hawks, and owls, and they're very dangerous. So if someone has, saw an owl or something that was hit by a car on the road, we give special instructions on how to safely get that species into our care, because they can be dangerous to the bird itself, to a human, all of that. So we do a lot of education around that. And our ultimate goal is to then be able to release them back into the wild. So unfortunately, sometimes a lot of wildlife doesn't make it. But we do our best to get them back into the wild, because the raptors are specialty hunters, and they need all of their special adaptations in working order: their eyes, their sight, their flight, their strength. And so if we have a bird that's not able to be released, what the Audubon does help with do is place them in other facilities around the country. So if they're suitable for education, they can be used as an education ambassador as well at zoos or other Audubon organizations. So there's many ways that folks can get involved to help with bringing in a bird that needs help, or donating to an organization that can help them. Our food bill is astronomical. It's the largest cost we have to the center, over $60,000 a year. And yes, they're meat eaters, so that's fish, chicks, mice, many mouths to feed.
And then you people can visit and actually see these birds as well, that you're rehabilitating in permanent residence.
Exactly. Actually, has anybody been to our center before?
Years ago.
Yeah.
A few hands. Okay, great.
Love that.
Come and visit again. So we do, again, if they can't go back to the wild, they can have a permanent home with us. We've got 19 different species of raptors that you can visit when you come and see our center. All the different types, including black vultures and turkey vultures that live at our center.
And then the Seminole Central Florida Zoo in Sanford has a permanent bald eagles there as well, that can no longer be released into the wild.
They came through our center, actually.
Any questions more from the audience? We'll pop behind you, Lisa, and come back to you. When? Oh.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah.
We're getting everybody. We got all day.
So I just want to clarify, so I didn't know this, I'm picking this up in the conversation. So vultures, even though they don't hunt live prey, they're still considered raptors.
Yes-ish.
I was shocked.
So-
I didn't realize that, too. I was shocked. 'Cause
So taxonomy changes all of the time. Like literally in the next minute, there'll be a change in classifying animals. And for raptors, vultures are one of those. They have gone back and forth from being classified as a raptor to not. It's currently thought that they're more closely related genetically to storks. However, locally there wasn't any other centers that were really helping them, so we said, yeah, they're definitely a raptor. So that way
that's
they
great.
can be a species that we take care of.
And if you look at the technical definition, which I just cheated and did, they are considered raptors because they eat meat.
Correct. So they still have talons and they still have a curved beak, and they are carnivores, which are kind of the three overarching things that make a bird a raptor. They're kind of missing the piece, like you said, of actually hunting down, actively hunting their
That's
food.
the way I think about them as well, because this came up actually earlier on as well, with us, and Jayne kind of nailed it too, is that when we thought about we all kind of like went, well, is that right? But then, really, if you look at the physicality of the bird, it matches pretty much exactly what you expect. It's just that you think of hawks and you think of eagles and you think of, owls that have this very kind of aggressiveness to them, and, vultures are semi-docile, they just kind of float around and then they bounce down on the ground, hop up and down, and, take care of the roadkill.
Yep.
Nature's cleanup crew.
Lynn.
I have two questions. One for the Bird of Prey Center. What's your criteria when you do release? Where do you choose to release?
So we always release them back from where they came from, if at all possible. Sometimes when we get eagles that are injured due to territory fights or things like that, we might release them in a different location to keep them safe. But we take them back to their original nest area or territory.
That's great. And then are you going to do a Q&A tomorrow?
After the movie, I
Yeah.
did.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, she has to. We're forcing her.
Okay.
Karen.
What about the stories of hawks coming in your backyard and taking your little puppy?
No.
No?
So yes, just
that
pretty
doesn't
much across the
happen.
board, no. So the largest hawks we have here in Central Florida are our red-tailed hawks. They themselves only weigh about 3 pounds. They can only carry about a third of their body weight, so you're looking at something about 1 pound is all they'd be able to carry off. So again, if you have a little tiny teacup puppy that you're letting wander around your yard, maybe. But as an adult, all of our cats and our dogs and things like that don't need to worry. That being said, during nesting season, they are quite territorial and they will swoop down at humans or animals to scare us off because they're protecting their young. So they're not actually hunting your pet at that point. They are trying to scare your pet away to protect their nest.
You can watch that action occur in my backyard all the time. So I back up to a nature preserve, and red-tailed hawks are all over the place.
Yep.
So, yes.
I heard you say you wrote a children's book. So I'm just wondering, if you brought some to sell.
Yeah, they're $10,
Okay, great.
and I'll sign them.
Be out there. Oh, wonderful.
I guess the library will let me. I brought one for the library, just to give to the library, but I have them in the car.
And did you write any,
I've done about 20 little books.
really?
They're just not, runs like a girl. I did one for Haiti after the earthquake that raised money to build a school called Lily in the Sky with Kindness. This pilot was flying back and forth with his little dachshund. So I made a book years ago, and all the money went to that. But I'm self-published. I'm on Amazon, but not. I volunteered with kids in jail for a couple of years, and they did a book with me called Life in Their Cage that should be in every school district, but it's not. And I also volunteered with Alzheimer's and dementia at the Caring Place in Hot Springs, and they wrote a book called I Can't Find My Way Back Home that should be out too. But I got an editor. We're working on some stuff. I got a really cute elephant book, and I got, what do you get if you cross an elephant with a rhinoceros? Elephino. So I got some cute stuff coming out. It's just not out yet, you know? So,
Yeah, we have a question right back here.
And you mentioned about the hogs. I'm with Rabbit Society, and they said recommended not to have the rabbit outside. I used to have one of my rabbits before, first one, on the patio outside the spring porch. But since I heard that, I'm afraid to have the rabbit, the other one, but that one, out of the porch. So any incident that happened before, like a hog or any of these flying birds catching a rabbit?
So I would be more cautious of a rabbit only because in the wild, that would be natural prey for them, our wild marsh rabbits. So they're not necessarily going to know the difference between a domesticated pet rabbit and our wild ones. So I would probably be a bit more cautious with that animal.
Can't owls pick up more? Because I've seen an owl with like a huge long snake just.
So we do, our largest owl in the area is a great horned owl, and they actually are one of the few raptors that can lift more than their own body weight. So they will lift larger prey. But the good thing about that is our great horns were really rural based. So if you live out near a wildlife preserve, you probably have
Yes.
them. But here in our urban areas, they're not going to be a species that you would need to worry about.
Barred owls in this area.
Correct,
Yeah,
our
you see
barred
barn
owls.
owls by my house.
Lots
a
of
lot,
bird
too.
owls.
And they only weigh about 1.5 pounds, and again, can only carry about a third of their body weight. So not too much to worry about with them.
They're the cutest.
So I'm originally from upstate New York, and owls are not as common there as they are here, and they're also very wary of people. But I've seen barred owls here where I've been 10, 15 feet from them. I don't know if they're protecting a kill or something like that, but they don't seem to be as wary of people in this area. Why is that?
Well, not just our owls too, but even our urban hawks and our urban eagles, we see that too. They themselves were born and raised in urban areas around people, and they kind of lose some of that fear of humans, unfortunately, which can put them in trouble because they get close to our cars where we can hit them alongside the road, for example, or they get labeled a nuisance animal and then are sought out and killed because of that. So it's not necessarily a great thing that it happens, but it does happen here in our urban areas. It does show how adaptable some of these animals are. The fact that they have learned that they used to be in a forest, and now they're in our urban settings in our neighborhoods and still able to survive and find the food and the shelter that they need. It's pretty neat to see, actually.
Actually, kind of brings up a question, and this is sort of a weird question, but I want to ask it for Jayne as well. it's sort of like about the idea of that Adonis is so comfortable around you and people that you bring towards him. That's like a sign of trust. But there's obviously other vultures in the area, and I'm wondering about the relationship that Adonis has with them.
I feed them too.
Yeah.
I feed Thelma and Dummy. I feed them too, but he doesn't like one of them because she ditched him. He finally had a mate, and she ditched. In fact, him sitting on the eggs, he had to do that when she ditched him, and so he sat on the eggs for 40 days. And I had to go back in the woods, and she comes back, but she's involved with another male, and so he tries to chase. He'll put up with the male, but he tries to chase her in the street to get her run over. That's another book. No, he doesn't write. Yeah, there's some kind of. Yeah.
Just I'm really curious about that sort of like, obviously there's a natural relationship. We know that these are animals that spend an incredible amount of time together in a community kind of setting in terms of like gathering.
But he had a cat. That's how I met him. And somebody shot the cat. This tells you about his personality. And he guarded that cat from the other vultures until I could get there and bury that cat. And now he's got a new friend. The neighbors have a little kitten that's a Manx, no tail, black cat with no tail. And so they hang out. They love each other. It's funny. And the neighbors go, "Oh my God, my cat's over with that vulture again." So they're letting him come over. They go, "Can you bring Adonis over to our house?" So he goes over there to their driveway and sits with him. It's really a character. He's a character.
I said I wasn't going to spoil the movie, but that kind of just brings up something that I just really want to talk about. And so you'll see it happen in the movie, and it's not a spoiler, I mean, or anything. But it's just there's a situation that occurs in the movie where Adonis goes to essentially live in sort of a retirement community apartment complex, and they don't like Adonis too much, but then ultimately, begrudgingly almost, they learn to accept him, and that's really because of and maybe you can tell what it is that Adonis does that sort of makes them all happy.
Oh, because they're on the water and it's real exclusive. Well, these are older condos, but they have a lot of geese, and geese are messy. So you'll see.
Geese go to the bathroom wherever they.
Forever. No, and one lady was complaining that Adonis was eating her flowers, and I said, well, he's not a vegetarian. I know that for a fact. I'd see people throwing bananas and broccoli up there, and I was like, I had to put a sign up, hey, don't
feed the birds. Don't feed the vulture.
You're attracting other animals. So he's got to stay because the geese are afraid of him. They think he's some vicious hawk.
Yeah.
And so my friend has a really expensive house, and they put up coyotes, fake coyotes, and the geese are all over them sitting. So I made her some
fake
it's in the plywood vultures to put in her $7 million house.
Yeah. This idea is this community is they'll put up with the vulture because that's better than all the goose poop.
Yeah. But he was the stinker in that movie. You saw what he did.
Yeah, it's a riot. So
he is a stinker. If you see the movie, you'll see.
Valerie.
So the relationship that Jayne and Adonis have seems really unique and special, and they talk about it a little in the doc about how he's lived a lot longer than he would had he not had her companionship. Do you guys see that at the center with your relationship with these birds? They live longer. Do you build a sense of trust with them?
Well, at our facility, we have relationships with them, but it's we keep them very wild, and so we always recommend, also if someone has an injured wildlife at their home, like it's not a safe situation for the animal or the person to keep or habituate them, because then it could turn into a dangerous situation later. So we try to encourage folks to get them to a properly licensed rehabilitator, someone who can care for the animal. But certainly we work with our education birds on a daily basis, and we care for the birds that are permanent residents, and they're not out competing for food, they're not around other predators, so they do have a safe place to be and thrive at our facility.
We have, so usually in the wild, vultures live to be about 20, 25 years old. We have a few that are over 30, and they were rescued as an adult, so we have no idea how much older than 30 they are, but they do, under human care, they can live a lot longer because of the care that they give.
So have they been with you for 30 years?
So they have been at our center for over 30 years, yes.
I didn't realize that, because wildlife people in Arkansas said their average in the wild, the zoo guy said 8 years. He said if they're in captivity, they live about 25 in their zoo, because he said danger to get, what I'm doing
Less
is not
likely to
legal.
get hit by
I'm
a
breaking
car.
the law,
Right.
basically. It's a $10,000 fine for feed. So what I'm doing is not really
Yeah,
accepted by.
this is probably a good time to let you all know that you should not actually,
Don't do what Janie does,
Don't do
even
what
though
I
it's
do.
awesome.
as amazing
But I'm
as
glad I
this
do
is.
it. I won't quit doing it.
Yeah. I feel like we all live in Florida, so every year when we hit a freeze, they always tell you if you find a iguana in your front yard, to not put it in your car and drive it anywhere, because when
will
it
wake
thaws out, it will wake up and it will wreak havoc on you on the interstate. This is probably a good time to consider the idea of what if that iguana could fly also.
That's happened. The
was
red
impressed
shoulder
with all the
hawk,
little
people have
lizards
put it
out
in
there.
their
Yeah.
car. And
All those little, the little brown ones
Little
are bad,
moles,
and they're
yeah.
killing all the lizards that we saw at the birds. That's a neat center.
Yeah, we have an insane amount of invasive
That's an impressive-
species in Florida.
That birds of prey, I'm going back tomorrow when I can spend more time. It's really impressive.
But once a year, Janie, the paper has to publish essentially an article telling people do not pick up the perceptibly dead iguana in your front yard is not.
Now you actually
Not that.
freeze and then come back.
Yeah, they will
alive?
freeze and seize up and
Fall
take a
over
nap
tree.
and wake up.
they basically take a nap, and then when they warm up, they wake
Well,
up.
Remind me to tell you a story about the salmon.
Okay. Right down here.
Yeah, for the Audubon folks, I know Ann Young, years ago, took care of the songbirds, and she's passed away now, but do you recommend someone calls, is there a place similar to her anymore?
Yes, we have a whole network all over, not only in Central Florida, but in Florida. So there are other folks out there that are helping songbirds, mammals, other species. Back to Nature is a great one that we work with a lot. We just happen to specialize, in raptors. But there's many folks that are out there. You can call the center if you have a question, and we'll direct you.
Which, so you admitted that what you do is illegal. What the benefit for us locally is you don't have to do what Janie's doing, because there is licensed facilities like us that would be able to care for those animals, which is the benefit of being here with all of the network that we have.
What is the name of your facility? I have never heard of it. I'm so glad I came.
Yeah. It's the Audubon Center for Birds of Prey. It's 5 minutes up the street on 1792, and Lake is the closest, largest intersection.
Yep.
But there's also there's a state sign, brown sign with their name on it, right where you turn to get there, right on 1792. So it's just there's lots of signs on 1792.
When's a good time to bring my 3-year-old granddaughter?
Whenever. They're not. I know, like go visit the zoo. It's the morning when they're active. For our birds, it's whenever. It's not really that big of a deal. Whenever you come, we're open 10 to 4, every day but Mondays.
One more here, and I'll come back to you.
What's the biggest risk for birds of prey in general? Is it automobiles or pesticides or lack of cavities to nest in, or downtown Orlando? We have owls and listeners here in the park, but I see people putting pesticides out more frequently and cutting down trees with both of them. So I guess I'm saying, what's the best thing that we can do to continue to have birds of prey in urban areas?
Great question. Certainly, 80% of the injuries are directly related to human-wildlife interface. So we see the largest number of injuries due to vehicle strikes, but all of the other things that you mentioned, we see very frequently: poisons, electrocutions, gunshot wounds, unfortunately still. Many falls from nests, some are unknown. But the best thing that you could do is you can create a safe place like at your home, keep habitat that is natural, and certainly our large oak trees that have cavities are great homes for barred owls, kestrels, the bird that we brought today, eastern screech owls. So you can learn a lot about what's in your yard and in your community and try to protect that, because the loss of habitat is the biggest thing. So we're trying to keep a safe space and enough green space for raptors and other wildlife as well as us.
We advocate a lot for native plants as well, which sort of indirectly helps they're predators. They're at the top of the food chain. So if you're helping the lower things, the caterpillars and the herbivore animals and all that, it'll work its way up to having our benefit for our raptors as well.
I think maybe a good example of human interface with wild bird would be sandhill cranes here in Central Florida, because they're so docile. And you know, they get hit here and there by my house as well because of the area, but you've got to pay attention while you're driving cars, because they are not going to move for you. Like, so. Lisa.
So I just wanted to thank you and tell you a story. I had not really been in contact with Audubon. I just don't have much interaction with birds. But I'm known as the animal person in my office, so I'm sitting at my desk one day, somebody comes running in and goes, "Lisa, there's an injured bird outside, big bird. What should we do?" I'm like, "What?" So I said, "Okay, let's find a really big box." So they found a really big carton and they put it over the bird. "Now what would you do?" I said, "Well, call Audubon. Somebody will come out." And I think you may have come out within like half an hour and picked it up, because next thing I knew, I said, "Well, what happened?" They came and got it and it's gone. So I just wanted to say thank you.
That's great.
Well, tell everybody what to do. Like, this is the chance to kind of say, like, what? Oh my God, it's in my yard. What do I do?
Yeah, a lot of what she already mentioned, actually. So for raptors, they're kind of funny. If they can't see you, you don't exist. So we use that to our advantage in the clinic by having them wear hoods that cover their eyes, so we can do all the medical care for them. So that works for y'all if you find an injured one, to throw a blanket, a towel, a sheet, a jacket, whatever you have over their head, or a box if you have a large enough box, to cover their eyes, and then you can be able to pick it up with that blanket or towel, put it in a dog or cat kennel, a box with holes, whatever, to safely keep it contained. Again, you don't want it to be flapping around your car if it comes to, and be able to bring it to us. We don't do too many rescues ourselves at the center. We have a very small staff and some volunteers, but not too many. So we usually rely on community members to be the ambulance, if you will, to bring the bird to us. And that way we can get it the best care. But definitely call us. We will, again, if it's a bird of prey, we will talk you through all of those steps. And if it's not a bird of prey, then we have all that list of resources to make sure you get to the right place.
I can add to that. If it's a vulture and you throw a blanket up, I had to bring Adonis in, they throw up, and it's the nastiest smelling thing ever. It was, poor Jennifer was in her car, her Acura, and it was the worst smell ever.
It's true.
No, it was the worst.
I know.
I say vultures are great. They can defecate on their legs and projectile vomit at you. So
It's really no different than children.
beware. Beware. They have great defense mechanisms.
It's quite caustic if it happens to hit you.
Just imagine
I
stomach
mean-
acid.
I was going to say their stomach
Stomach
acid is
acid.
really strong because they can eat, right? They eat roadkill. They can eat all sorts of horrible things that would make us so sick, but it doesn't make them sick because the pH in their stomach is just so acidic. It kills all of that. So I'm sure probably wouldn't be great to have it on you, but mostly it's just the lingering smell is the issue, in my opinion.
I still have my fingers.
So when you feed them, do they prefer them as roadkill, or do they prefer chopped up whatever?
Well, at our site, we give just a food item is dead, so they're not live.
Yeah,
so
they're not live hunting.
they're not live hunting at our site.
But you give them fresh food though, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Janie, you feed.
Adonis is spoiled.
Yeah.
He doesn't like hamburger meat because it makes his beak dirty. He prefers steak. He doesn't like pork because it makes his beak water. So he prefers beef.
He's a high-class vulture.
spoiled.
He is. He's very
Only-
particular.
And that's
He's-
addressed in the film as well.
He's
You're
spoiled.
buying some good-looking steak. Like, I want to come over and have
And he
dinner
won't
with the
eat,
vulture.
he had to live on fish, I guess. There was a lake over there. And I worked at this really fancy restaurant. It's funny because they'd give me some of the filet, the fish scraps, salmon.
scraps.
And sea bass. It's funny, he preferred salmon because, I think because of the color more than it's sea bass.
Yeah.
And he got to the point, I'm tired of eating fish.
I wonder if it's also because salmon has a notable, like, aroma to it, where sea bass is such a mild, low-fat fish that it would probably...
I think it made the texture too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't like that, it's funny because he doesn't like that hamburger. They hate to be dirty too. That's the first thing they
Keep
do is
clean.
clean themselves up after.
We had researchers from UF, I believe it was, a few years ago that came out specifically to do a food preference study in vultures. And it was fascinating to watch them. They had a variety of food, and their control was actually strawberries, which one of our black vultures, Ufta, actually ended up preferring over the meat, which totally ruined their data, and the researchers were so mad.
That's amazing. I can save some money.
Which I think it was more the color of the bright red of it.
It's like little blobs of blood.
That's right, because Adonis loves, if you wear flip-flops out there and you have red toenail painted, oh my God. Oh, he's just in love with red toenails.
Yeah, right here. Hi.
Do raptors have any relationship to reflective surfaces? I ask because I have a small wildlife situation in my backyard, and I have a habituated male cardinal who must have his mirror. And if he doesn't have it, he starts pecking windows.
That's great.
So, any thoughts there?
Yeah, birds in general don't see windows the way we do. They do see the reflection of whatever's being reflected in it, which is usually trees and bushes and stuff around our homes. So the issue there is that they can see their reflection and sometimes get aggressive, or more likely they're just going to run into your windows and injure themselves from that collision because they're only seeing that reflection. So we do encourage you, if you're going to have bird feeders in your yard, actually have them within 3 feet of the window. So if there is a collision, they're not going as fast and less likely to hurt themselves that way.
That's funny. That is exactly how the bush in my backyard has essentially what you would call a habitual cardinal. This is a cardinal that does not come in the winter. It just never leaves. And it is within arm's distance of our window. We have those little square bird feeders that we just put inside this big bush for this cardinal that has been there for like 6 years. So
Yeah, mine's at least 5, maybe 6.
Yeah.
So all the heritage, started this thing. I don't know how it got started other than I made the mistake of putting a mirror out there. But of course the raptors sit on the fence and wait for somebody to make a wrong move.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, interesting stuff.
Right, there was one more question that went up. Was it? Yes.
So first, just a comment on the mirror thing. I had a woodpecker in the neighborhood I lived in that went down the street and damaged mirrors on about 8 cars. And that happens periodically. If you search the internet, you'll find it. But no, we haven't mentioned anything about osprey.
Yeah, there's one behind the Rio Winter Park Village. There's an osprey nest up there.
There's so many around this area. I see them all the time. Do you guys work with osprey too?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And do they exclusively eat fish, or do they eat other?
Pretty much in the wild, they exclusively eat fish. And I mean, that's what we feed them at our site as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're pretty awesome birds, actually. We have a really high population here because they do need water sources, which Florida has tons of, obviously. But their body adaptations are really made specifically for catching fish. It's like 99% of their diet in the wild. So their talons are actually extra curved, literally big old fishing hooks. And they've got extra bumps on the bottom of their feet called spicules, and that works as like treads on our shoes to help them grab the fish better. And they actually have their third toe can rotate around to have 2 in the front, 2 in the back,
cool.
because it gives them better grasp on the fish as they're flying. So yeah, fish is what they're made to eat, and that is what they do.
Actually, in some areas are called fish hawks.
Fish hawks, yep. Yep.
But yeah, there's a big nest on one of the street poles right behind the movie theater where the 3/4 of the festival is playing right now. I saw him land the other day in the nest.
Unfortunately, sometimes they don't pick the best locations for nests, but you'll see them on the light poles. And
You can
things
see them
like
on
that.
all the entire greenway. If you drive the greenway, there's one every 4th light. Matthew.
Yeah, I have a question for Janie about the making of the film, which if Jonathan was here, we could ask him, obviously, but how did he find your story, and did you trust him immediately? Or did you have to see some of his past work, or how did you get together to tell the story of Broken Wings?
Well, he's a special man, and he's a great filmmaker. I didn't go see he was in Hot Springs film. He did Dawns of Disco, so he was at the film festival, and I was waiting tables. And his producer, his friend Mara, came in and saw the book. So I went over to watch a couple of films at the film festival, and I said, well, you want to go meet Adonis? And so he said, sure, do you care if I film? And I said, no, I don't care if you film. Of course, I'd had a couple of Bloody Marys, so, so we go along and film it, and there's Adonis, and he was just enthralled with the whole idea that this bird was just so open to and trusting, And so he put a little teaser, he just said, I think I want to do more. And so he came back, he had come back several times. That film took a couple of years to film, partly because what was going on. There's a lot that goes on. It's not just about Adonis. There's a lot going on. I have an older lady that was at a bus stop years ago. So she's been on my couch ever since. I told her she could stay at my house for a couple of days, and I came home and there was everything moved in. She's quite the hoarder. But, you know, it is what it is. So he's an excellent filmmaker. So he's captured a lot of stuff. And Adonis is very trusting. And my editor's uncle is a bird rehabber, and he's in the film, and he's very much against basically what I do. You know, basically he thought the bird needed to be put down or whatever they were going to do with him. But, you know, Birds of Prey is very great about keeping an injured. There's not a facility really like that in Arkansas, really. They were more into hawks or eagles or owls. So I was concerned, and so I just decided, well, I'll just keep on keeping on. So.
And you have interaction with the Fish and Wildlife Commission.
I've talked to him before. Adonis has gone missing a couple of times. There was a red fox up in the woods. Somebody set a trap, and he got hung up in it, and he lost 3 toes. So I had him in a rehab, and it was a shelter place. And then he started taking a liking to ice cream and everything else, and he was feeling better and drinking, you know. So I decided it was time for him to go back into the woods. He didn't like really being in it. It was a nice screen, similar to what, and he was miserable. So I decided, you know, I'll just take him back, let him create his own, you know, people create their own energy. So I decided I'll let him create his own energy, and I'll help him as much as I can. I've been really protective of him and try to bring him in sometimes, and I think, am I doing really the right thing, you know? I pray a lot about him. I think he has angels watching over him, so it is what it is. You know, I wouldn't want to die in prison or a nursing home. Well, you know, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Is it possible that there's both a physical and an emotional, psychological aspect to your relationship with Adonis, or our relationship to any bird? I mean, is there any kind of insight that they might have? Is there any? What is it? Is it smell? Is it odor? Is it?
I don't know. He's got the best. He's really smart, and he's got the best eyesight. I think turkey vultures have smell, right?
Better smell, yep.
Yeah, and the black vultures they have better eyesight, but he'll be looking up in the sky, and I'm thinking, what is he looking at? And I don't see nothing, and all of a sudden there'll be one of those other black vultures coming down. So my idea on it, the turkey vultures find the dead carcass first, and then these blacks come in, they see them, and they kind of bully the turkey. This is what I hear. I had a wounded turkey vulture up there too. His name was Oscar. Some people hit him, a car, and the vet said, I got this turkey vulture, my friend, and there was Tommy Young was a great bird rehabber, but he couldn't stay afloat. So they brought this bird out to stay with Adonis, and he was going to fly away. Eventually he did fly away. But Adonis accepted him, and he shared his food with him. And I didn't video any of that. You know what I mean? Jonathan wasn't here. So, and he's good with cat. You know, he's an incredible bird. These birds out here, I'm sure, have a bond with you like that. Right? Don't they bond with you?
Yeah, they definitely show preferences. We try very hard not to personify them because we don't know what the birds are thinking, right? But from the human side of that, there has been plenty of studies that show the benefits of being in nature and being near wildlife on humans. There was a study that even showed watching nature programs is enough to decrease stress and increase positive emotions in humans. So yes, there's definitely a benefit for us, even if we can't necessarily know what the animals themselves are thinking.
Well, it amazes me too, because there could be, like this cat feeds. If I'm not, they don't fight each other, you know, leave food. It's kind of like the other birds. There's cardinals that come, and there's other birds. Have you ever seen a cowbird? You know about them, right? They'll lay an egg in cardinals, and then they never see their babies, and they fly away. So there's a lot of birds up there, and they all kind of interact. Adonis doesn't eat all his meat, so do all these other birds, and they all kind of hang out, so it's kind of interesting.
Jax?
So, aren't you worried that this movie's gonna bring notice to your criminal act?
Well, yeah, I probably will, but I wanted people to enlighten people that there's more to animals, and they do have feelings, and, you know, it's okay to, you know, bring it on. I'm in trouble with the IRS anyway, so. You know, it is what it is. Write me in prison.
Does he come up to the house when it's bad weather?
He doesn't like coming to the house. He will come. He's been there a couple of times. He was there when like I said, after he got rehabbed. I brought him back there until I got him. But he was getting into stuff, and letting him know he's ready to go. And when it was real bad snow, it was real icy. He at first was resistant to me catching him, and then I caught him, and once it warmed up, he was ready to go back. And that's a funny scene in the movie. And then I felt guilty again one another winter, and then I decided, he told me he didn't want to ever go through that process again.
And you can see throughout the film that Adonis is not interested in living in the house.
No.
At all, and of course he shouldn't.
No,
But yeah.
He's not.
Did he let you near the eggs that he was going?
Oh, he showed me where they were. He took he barked. He showed me, took me way back into the woods. He pulled my jeans at first, and he'd wait, and he'd hop, and then back around, woof, woof. Then he'd want me to go further and further, and I was in the stickers, and there's thorns and stuff like that. I'm crawling. I got bit by a snake up there. After an eagle came in, after the babies were born, and got one of the baby birds, and it was raining, and I grabbed one of them, and there was a cab waiting for me because I don't have a car, so I took the other bird back to the cab and went back up in the woods looking for Adonis because he went after that eagle. And climbing through those blackberry bushes, I got popped by something, and I couldn't find Adonis, and so I decided I better go back to the cab. So I went home that night, and the cab driver says, I think you got bit by something. I said, I know, I'm going to go make a poultice, but I got this baby bird. So I had to stop by and see what you do for a baby bird. And so every 30 minutes, you had to get up all night long, feed this little baby bird. So I called the vet, and so I took the baby bird to the vet the next day. Meanwhile, my leg was swollen up, but it went down. And so, ironically, when I took that baby bird in there to check on him, the eagle had been brought in. Apparently, somebody shot the eagle because this eagle was used in going. It was a rich neighborhood, so I'm sure this eagle went after somebody's little pet. He was okay, but it was just weird because I brought this baby vulture and then he had eaten the other ones. And here he is, huge, and he's okay, and it was like this irony. And then and they took him to Tommy Young's and they painted him, they named him Albert Einstein and painted his toenails blue. So, yeah, so he's still around. That's incredible. And then about 6 months I was in the shower, it was like a scene from Psycho. My snake bite just blew, it was terrible. So it was a terrible event, but I kept, so, yeah. It is what it is.
And giving you fine examples of why you should not do this.
Yeah. I say again, we do not recommend any of this. It's all illegal. Please don't go take a baby vulture from its nest and say that you heard it at Audubon.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I had to ask the audience in the last movie if everybody thought if you thought I was okay doing this, please raise your hand. Because there's a lot of people that don't think I should be doing this.
Yeah, Jennifer.
As somebody who kind of is on hand with some of this, is that it's a nice sized wooded space, and he has a little off into the woods. He has a space. Yeah. There's like a dog house that she has in a kind of an area with hay and stuff to keep him warm. And there's blankets back there that he can get into and keep warm in certain times. And then he has a safe space in this middle of this wooded area that is surrounded by the condos and nice homes and people that know that Adonis is there and kind of watch out for him too. And they are in touch with Jayne and stuff. So I feel like he's not only protected by Jayne, but by the family of people.
Yeah, the community. I mean, it's an incredibly. When we saw the movie, I think the thing that struck us about it is not just the relationship or the idea of seeing this vulture that's hopping up and down and so excited to see someone. It's that it's a wildly unique story. I mean, it just doesn't really exist out there in the world, the idea of this, like, relationship that happens in the movie. Not just with Jayne and Adonis, but kind of, with the surrounding people, you know. Well, we definitely have some time for a couple more questions, and we did get a nice notice that we can have the raptor inside.
Oh, that's great. That's
wonderful.
So they probably found it's very tiny.
Who's bringing the bird in? Are you
It's very tiny.
The bird is in the green room. But yeah, let's a couple more questions, and then maybe we can bring out the celebrity bird.
Everyone's like, no more questions.
No
I
more
wanna see
questions.
the bird.
Crap, you spoil it. The bird's coming out.
I have one thing. Do you know about, I think the vultures I've seen in my neighborhood are quite, I mean, they're really nice to each other, and they have a hierarchy, and there was a dead deer on the side of the road once, and I was leaving to go out, and there were at least 30 vultures in line of two, all the way down, and there would be 2 of them eating on the carcass, and then they would go to the back of the line and start chasing themselves. And then I was gone for about 2 hours, and when I came back, there was probably maybe about 6 left, and there was no corn. But when there were 30 of them, they were in line to eat, to have their, they weren't all just going at it. So is that normal?
Yeah, can you discuss how they're
I mean, I'm not sure about the whole line thing. I'm not sure I've seen that, but there is a hierarchy. Most raptors are solitary. One of the reasons I love vultures is because they're not. They are very social. They will stay together in their family groups. So when you see a group of vultures, they're usually related somehow, which I just love. And they do have a hierarchy as far as who's going to eat first, being the high, the older ones, the matriarch, the patriarch, all of them, and then trickling down to the younger ones. And they'll put each other in place of, it's not your turn to eat yet, and they kind of learn that whole system, which is, it totally does happen out in the wild. Yep.
That's really cool.
And they mate for life too. I should have mentioned that too. Raptors in general are monogamous in that way. So I would guess probably the pairs you were seeing were probably the mates, especially during mating season. That's going to be a time that they're going to bond with their mate.
So you had a question right here.
When you see vultures circling, like I've seen around downtown Orlando, around the high-rise, or over our neighborhood, does that mean there's the presence of a carrion, some carcass or something, or is it just that they're looking usually? If there's a group.
Yeah.
Sometimes you see large groups.
So they are amazing at conserving their energy. So when you see them circling, it's usually just that it's the good air current that is allowing them to be able to fly. Well, they're not even flapping, right?
They don't flap. They're
not
essentially soaring.
Just soaring on the wind current that way, which is why it happens a lot downtown, because with our skyscrapers and in between, it creates those air currents that they need to just be able to stay aloft without actually flapping their wings that way. That being said, they do have a great sense of smell. Like Janie said, our turkey vultures and our black vultures will follow them and find their prey that way. So it could be that there's carrion, or that they're just waiting until they catch a whiff of that carrion. They can smell about a mile away carrion. So when they're kind of just soaring that way, that could be what they're sort of doing, or mostly just probably conserving energy. Yeah.
Let's do 1 or 2 more, and then we'll bring out the bird. No, that's just, you just want to see the bird. 1 more up top.
Does a bird have a name?
Les.
So you gave a very specific definition of the raptor: the curved beak, the talon, the carnivores.
Yep.
So then a bird like another bird I see in this area that I love, they're gorgeous American kites. They're not raptors then.
Our kites.
What would they be?
They are raptors. The kites are, yeah. Their prey is mostly insects, but that still counts as meat. And they have a curved beak and talons. I guess I should also specify, for our raptors, they're hunting with their talons. Other carnivorous birds, like a pelican or a penguin, are catching their food with their beak. One of the things that makes a raptor is using their talons to catch their food, which the kites do.
They're incredible to watch, right? I can't even think
The vultures and the kites are my two favorites, so I love talking about this. But yeah, they here locally, right? They show up in March, and to me, that's just like spring has come when you start seeing our first kites in the area. And then when they leave in August, I always get kind of sad until they show up again next year. The swallowtail kites are specifically the ones that you'll see that way with the V-shaped tail. And again, they soar on the wind. They don't flap a lot. That's where their name comes from. The kite, like the toy, right? Soaring in the sky. And then we do also have here in Florida another species called an Everglades snail kite, which is on our state endangered species list. They do specify, like their name says, they eat snails. So we are losing our snail population here, and that's affecting them as well. And I'm going to stop talking because nobody wants to hear me talk about it.
And no one is now listening to you.
So you can talk about Lance, 'cause
Yeah.
Oh, sure, perfect.
Bring
Yeah.
Lance.
So this is one of our ambassador birds. Again, he is glove trained and kennel trained to visit off-site. His name is Lance, and he is an American kestrel. Despite his size, this is full grown, and they are the smallest in the falcon family. So Lance came to our center. He was actually kept illegally as a pet, and FWC did confiscate him from the family that had him. And when he made his way to our center through FWC, we did x-rays and found that he actually had a broken pelvis, which was what allowed him to be able to be caught by this family, and then it healed out of place while he was being kept as a pet. So he does not have the proper alignment in his tail and his pelvis to be able to steer, essentially. He can flap his wings, so he could be able to fly, but it's the steering that they use their tail for. So as he's moving around, you might notice he tucks his tail in quite low. That's just because of that pelvis injury. Now, they are falcons. So one of the things that falcons have are those black lines under their eyes. They're called mylar lines, and they help reflect or absorb the sunlight to keep it out of their eyes as they are hunting. It's where sports players got that idea to put the black lines under their eyes. They stole that from falcons and naturally have it out in the wild. And if you catch the back of Lance's head, you'll actually notice there's two black dots and a line down the middle. That's his fake face, if you will. The dots are called ocelli. And he, being a small predator, is also hunted by other things, usually other birds that would hunt him from behind. But having the fake eyes on the back of his head is his defense to sort of tell that the predator, they've already been spotted and not to attack me. Now, we do know Lance is a male by his coloration. Most birds of prey look exactly the same, whether they're males or females. A bald eagle, for example, white head, brown body, male or female, look exactly the same. For our kestrels, they are sexually dimorphic. So Lance has those beautiful sort of grayish slate-colored wings, and that's what the males have. His chest is also solid, where the females would have speckles on their chest, and their wings are kind of brown and boring, the way you imagine most birds are. They are cavity nesters, like we mentioned before, so you can leave those big, large oak trees and old-growth trees in our neighborhoods, definitely help them. They will also take to a man-made nest box. So if you're in a newer development, for example, that has done a lot of clear cutting, you can put up a pole or on a palm tree or whatever and put a nest box that is made for kestrels and be able to encourage them to have safe nesting areas in your area. They eat mostly insects and flying insects at that. So they love to hover above their prey and then dive down and catch it. Most falcons do that. So they love to eat things like grasshoppers and dragonflies, for example, that they can hunt after, and also other birds, because they do catch their food as they fly. So any smaller species he would go after as well. Because they dive down after their food when they're hunting, he actually has a special node in his nostril called a tubercle. And that allows the airflow to be broken up as he's diving down. So essentially he's not choking on the air that he would be inhaling as he's diving after his food.
Does he know his name?
He does not know his name, no. The vultures are definitely the smartest of our birds of prey. And like Jayne said, the vultures, I would believe, totally can learn their name, and they can be trained to do lots of different things. They are very curious birds. They love to get in. We give them, our vultures, puzzle feeders that you would give to a dog, for example. They have to like slide the things and open the flaps and push the buttons. Our vultures will do it in like 30 seconds flat. Other raptors, not so much. So he does not know his name is Lance, that he won't come when he's called or anything like that. But he has been conditioned to sit nicely on a perch and be used to being on the glove. And especially around groups of kids, Lance is he's one of my favorite birds to bring to small children because he totally is quite chill.
So I've been watching Lance sort of interaction as Kate's been taking around, and there does seem to be, he spends a large percentage of the time as he's going around looking at Kate. So there does seem to be a little bit of kind of social bonding, perhaps their trust. maybe.
Two things with that. One, Katie is the most familiar thing that's close to him. So you guys are new and scary, so at least he knows Katie.
Yeah.
But also she's the closest thing to him. And if he was being hunted, he wants to know
He would
what is the
hide
closest to him, because that's going to be the biggest, scariest thing.
Yeah.
So both knowing her and being aware that
Okay.
she's the closest thing.
Yeah, I've just been watching. He's just kind of spends most of his time looking at it.
One of the things kestrels will do for communication is this head bob and the tail bob. If you watch, especially if Katie's staying still too, he'll actually like bob his head up and down. And the best scientists have come up with is they use it for communication between each other. So we'll see if we catch him do that. But
Kestrels are the most common in this area, aren't they? Are they?
for falcons here in Florida, they're the most common that you're going to see in here. They actually nest here year round. They don't migrate through the way a lot of our other falcon species do. And he weighs about 4.5 ounces, so not too much.
So I knew you were bringing him, and I was excited to see him because I've never seen one up close, and he's not what I thought he was. I've seen another bird that I thought was an American kestrel. It's more black and white, and they call to each other. They seem to carry on, complain, whatever, to each other a lot. I see them flying around a lot. Is that another type of kestrel, or is that?
So it most likely is a red-shouldered hawk. And not that large. So then so we do get Merlin falcons during migration. They are just a little bit smaller, and they are darker in coloration, so possibly that. I don't know. If you ever get a photo of it, you send it to the center, because even though they're not raptors, if it's not a raptor even, we can help ID birds. So they have a high-pitched kee, 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 kee noise. Yeah. And well, the female is true. The females are a bit larger. For birds of prey, the females in general are about 25% larger, so quite a big difference when they're this tiny. And then again, they do have darker speckles, so maybe even just a female kestrel is what you're seeing.
One's in my neighborhood somewhere. I've not found it, because once you hear the call, it's very distinct. If anybody has a bird app and stuff, listen to the call, because you can recognize it very, not like others.
So speaking of calls, since you spend so much time around birds, can you imitate different birds' calls?
That is not a skill I have. We do have other employees that are amazing at copying, but that is not my forte. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was excellent. I don't know you. Well, I want to thank you all for coming out today and these incredible panelists.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having us.